You close all that so we can see the Zoom. Great. All right. Hello, I would like to call the Town of Rochester Town Board June 26, 2025 workshop meeting to order. Could all stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please do the roll call.
Councilman Alma is absent. Councilman Coleman.
Here.
Councilwoman Speaceth. Here. Councilman Wynn.
Here.
Supervisor Van Allen.
Here. Okay, so our first item is the acceptance of the agenda. I have some amendments. So I'll make a motion that the Town of Rochester Town Board accepts the agenda with the following amendments. So we're gonna add the introduction of the local laws A and B and initiating the seeker process.
Second.
And then we're adding
Sorry.
two discussion items, planning board general and the deep hole off of towpath. And then in the executive session, we're going to add discussion matters leading to the removal or discipline of particular persons.
Now second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstain, motion carries. Okay, so the first item on our agenda for our workshop meetings, we start with a public comment. This is where members of the public can address remarks to the board. We don't take question and answers at this time, but we might respond to anything that comes up in public comment during the next item, which is town board member time. So at this time, I'd like to open that portion of the meeting. Is there anyone here who would like to address the board?
I got a question. Did the town ever pass a law that you have to keep your lawn mowed? Like 4 inches or lower? 6 inches or lower at one time? When Mike was in, I thought they talked about it, I don't remember if it was ever passed. That was it.
Second.
Anything?
All right, so I'll go ahead and close the public comment portion of the meeting. And I can open it up to town board member time, and I can answer the question if you guys want me to do that. So no, we don't have that law. There are other laws about property maintenance that are in uniform code. But we don't have anything specific about the length of grass. And I believe now we have such things like no mow May, where people are purposely not mowing their lawn to help encourage pollinator habitats.
Late May.
So in board member time, is there anything else that any members of the board would like to discuss? Or questions you have for me? I was thinking about that, like. You're like curious about anything.
Pretty thorough.
Okay.
Like I keep us pretty.
And the way I printed, you have all my discussion notes in your agenda also, so. Okay, so I'll go ahead and close that portion of the meeting. We'll move on to approval and payment of abstract 6B of 2025. The audit of these bills was performed prior to this resolution. So I'll make a motion that the Town of Rochester Town Board approves and authorizes payment of abstract 6B of 2025 in the following amounts: general fund, $39,507.80. Highway fund, $219,913.95. Capital fund, $74,486.18. Zero street lighting, zero ambulance, and escrow, which is part of general fund, is $6,802.65. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstain, motion carries. And we are now joined by Councilwoman Alba.
I'm sorry?
I said I'll just give you a second.
yeah.
I have the amended agenda is on your folder there. So our next item is I just wanted to, before we move into the resolutions and then the rest of our discussion, I wanted to just have a space where we can talk about the community preservation plan, and I did circulate the draft on Monday, I think, with the edits in a red line version. And then I presented the final non-red line version, which would be the actual plan that is in the local law. I have that with us tonight. I didn't hear any input, though Councilman Coleman did a lot of work on that. He did all the formatting and replaced the photos that we discussed at our June 16th meeting. And then if you'd like, I can walk you through the edits we made or just open it up to discussion, whatever the board would like. So I can just I can explain the really straightforward edits. I did put it in the email to the board, but the public can hear this too. I did the correction. So we corrected that the Mohonk Mountain House being in the town of Rochester. We corrected the description of Veterans Park. And the original version of this plan was published in 2024 before we had changed our zoning code. So I had to do quite a few edits to make this plan comply with our new districts and the description of them and the chapters of code. And then there are some additional things that we put in our code that I thought was relevant. So I put that in. We did update photos to have agricultural photos that depict working farms and not just scenic landscapes. I edited the acknowledgement page to include everything that was on there, but then we have the current town board listed and the archive of it was originally published in June of 2024 and then edits made by the current board. The most substantial edits were done in the executive summary and the few pages after that, where we worked to mention the balance that we wanted to strike with this plan document and pulling ideas from the town comprehensive plan that we want this to be affordable place that has the rural industry that the community has been thriving off of and been performing and taking part of and working in for generations. So we included that type of language. We tried to highlight working farms more. We made some corrections to thinking about population changes and framing home ownership in the context of rural sprawl, balancing with the need for cluster development. So we tried to take a lot of what came in from our referrals and incorporate that into the executive summary and the description of why we need this plan. There were a few things, we really tried to also highlight cluster development and balancing responsible development and how trying to close the loop of what this plan is aiming to preserve and how we want that to amplify the community character and have this be a place where people can live and thrive. There were a few edits that I didn't feel like I could make. That was specifically in the end of the document where it talks about the plan priorities. There were some requests from the Agricultural Advisory Committee to insert you know, in consultation with the Agricultural Advisory Committee, some language like that. And the only reason why I didn't do that is because the sections they quoted were quotes from the comprehensive plan. And I felt like I didn't really want to open that can of worms by editing the quotations from the comprehensive plan. But I felt like the spirit was there because there was a lot of reference to consulting the agricultural community and having programs and purchase of development rights that still allowed for working farms to thrive and to do their work. And that is in that section. I think that was the main concern there. We also had an idea of having some case studies included as an addendum. It was very challenging for me to find anything that I felt really we would be able to adopt. But I did think that if we do move forward with this and this is on the ballot, I feel like we could share a lot of case studies with the public when we're having information sessions and publish that. I think this document focuses on purchase of development rights. It does not focus on purchase of land. There's not a lot of talk about land purchase in this document. And that was a lot of what the public in 2024 was nervous about. But I feel like this plan really sets us up for that type of acquisition and not land purchase acquisition. So with that, is there any other discussion or questions?
Thank you for turning it around so quickly.
And Councilman Coleman.
Yeah, the formatting looks great. It's so readable now.
Yeah, I was gonna say thank you for the work on it, guys. I'm sorry, I was taking out the weekend. And just thank you for the intent, the paragraphs you guys added in that intro with the wording that we wanted to strike our balance. I really what you guys did in that whole introductory section, I really appreciate, and thank you for your time and effort in the final minutes of it.
I know we've said it a bunch of times, but I want to reiterate the work the committee did to get it this far.
Yes.
It's phenomenal, and rereading it again this year with fresh eyes, I know when we were talking about it, there were some things that I highlighted, but overall, it's just a phenomenal amount of work. Great job. I think this edit does a good job of striking that balance between some of those things we talked about being attention, the fact that our business district is also a lot of prime farmland, which is also a good area to potentially look at housing. And so I think, as a board, we can feel comfortable saying that the guidance of this document is that, we want all of those things to be taken into consideration. It's not just about open spaces. It's not just about farmland. It's about finding balance between all those things. And then I think the last thing regarding the Ag Committee's comments, I'll speak for myself, but I think this is the hope of the board. These decisions will be put in the hands of a committee. Any acquisition or any type of transaction is going to be in public, have a public hearing. So there will be a lot of communication around this. And I would hope that this board or future boards would consult the committees, housing, agricultural committee, environmental committee. So I know that, that would be my preference if there were a consideration to look at one piece of property as opposed to another. So I know we couldn't necessarily put it in the document because it was quoting from the comp plan, but I think that's the intent and spirit. And I would hope that future boards would do that, would rely on the expertise of those groups. So.
Great. Do we feel comfortable moving on with the presentation of the local laws? Okay. So, our plan is to schedule a public hearing, but before we do that, I want to formally introduce the local laws. I have given both digital and hard copies to our town clerk. I circulated digital copies to the board, and I have hard copies here. I also made a binder for the public that has those in them. So this, we're looking at the plan document, but first, local law A of 2025 is the local law that adopts the plan document. So the actual local law is this one-page local law that adopts the plan document, and that it would be this version that we have with us, and then gives the instructions for where it's filed, which is with the town clerk, the New York State Commissioner of Environmental Conservation, the New York State Commissioner of Ag and Markets, the Commissioner of the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. So that's the first local law that we're introducing tonight. The second local law is local law B of 2025. This is, and both of these were introduced basically almost verbatim in 2024. I did not make any changes except in local law B. We are proposing a local law imposing a 1% real estate transfer tax instead of 1.5, which is what we had last year. So those are the two local laws, and then plus the plan document itself goes with local law A. In front of you, so it's, once we introduce the local laws, we need to start the seeker process. And the way we start it is by completing part 1 of the EAF, which I have in front of you. This says that we are introducing 2 local laws, which is an action that requires a seeker review. But because these local laws it's only the local laws, we just basically have to fill out the first page and a half of the EAF, which is shows that we are the only government entity that this involves this action, and that it's in line with our adopted land use plans. And then we list the community services. And then that's basically it, except for the last page, which with the findings, I just sign it as the preparer of the EAF. So are there any questions about the part 1 of the EAF? Okay, so I have some resolutions in the end of the agenda. I'd like to go ahead and do the seeker classification and declare ourselves the lead agent for both of these local laws. So would anyone else like to make those motions?
Then we appoint ourselves as lead agency, the adoption with consideration of the 2 local laws.
Second.
You want to say as presented?
As presented.
On agenda, great. Okay, second, any discussion? We should do that for, it is a roll call. We should do that for each one. So did you say local law A of 2025?
Local law A is 2025.
Okay.
Councilwoman Alba,
Aye.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Councilwoman Smeesa,
Aye.
Councilman Lynn,
Aye.
Supervisor Allen.
Aye. So the second is the seeker classification and declaration of lead agency for local law B of 2025, which is a local law imposing a real estate transfers tax to establish a community preservation fund.
So moved.
Have a second? Any discussion?
Councilwoman
Roll call.
Alba. Aye. Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Councilwoman Smeesa,
Aye.
Councilman Lynn,
Aye.
Supervisor Allen.
Aye. Okay, so these are type 1 actions, and we're the lead agency and there's no other involved agencies. And that's it, so we're gonna move on to resolutions. I have to do this on the fly. There was a flurry of emails about this road maintenance agreement. So our town attorney did weigh in over Nell while she's on vacation. So I'm going to make this, I have a slight change to the published agenda that, I'll just go ahead and make this motion so I can read it into the record. And then I can forward the language to you, Kate, for the minutes. So, I'll make a motion that the Town of Rochester Town Board accepts the road maintenance agreement for Emerson Rose subdivision for the maintenance of a shared private road between 3 lots as presented and contingent upon the following modifications which were approved by the town attorney. So that is to 1, remove in paragraph 15 the reference to unless otherwise approved by the planning board that sentence must be removed. And the second is the addition of a paragraph number 17 called emergency access and town liability, which reads, the owners of the lots shall maintain the shared driveway easement in such condition, including seasonal snow removal, as to permit fire, emergency, and safety vehicles to gain access to developed lots. The owners agree to absolve the town of Rochester from any liability or responsibility for care or maintenance of the shared driveway easement. And we will insert the lot numbers in that paragraph from the road. Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Question, where's Emerson Road?
Oh, Emerson Rose is the name of the subdivision, but yeah, it's Rock Hill Road. Is the,
Which Rockville Road?
Norris
Hill side or the, County Route 6 side?
I didn't look it up.
I'll look it up.
We just want to make sure that the town isn't responsible. Okay.
It was the
I think
wild,
it's-
wildland holding section.
Which,
Oh, so I think that's this side.
this side being,
Oh, sorry, the access off of the towpath.
okay,
I would say the Lawrence Hill, but.
or so, yes.
You're looking it up.
Is it a High Falls address or is it an Atwater address?
I didn't print out the RMA.
Bear with.
Thank you for looking. What?
Even if it's a high falling drive, it's all in Rochester.
56.
He's just trying to figure out where it is.
Well, there, I mean, the road does go through, one side is access through Forest Hill Road, which is the Atwater zip code. And the other side is County Route 6, which is the High Falls zip code.
I didn't pull my. Figure it out, but.
Okay, I think it's a High Falls address.
I think, yeah, I think.
Yes, I think Wyland uses a lot of towpath there, so.
Yeah, I thought 6. I was assuming.
I was thinking open space.
Thank you.
So, yeah, section. Is it access off the, right, yeah, it's the section access off the road. That answer it?
Yes.
Okay, any more discussion? All right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstain, the motion carries. Okay. Oops. So next, I have a couple budget modifications. I'm just gonna. I wrote them on a I wrote them on a sticky note. But I can pull up the numbers for you.
It was on the front page of your agenda.
Thank you, Kate. That's amazing that you noticed that. I was like, uh-oh, okay, so. I'm gonna read these off to you, and if you have questions, we can talk about it in discussion. So I'll make a motion that the Town of Rochester Town Board hereby authorizes the budget modifications to the adopted and amended 2025 budget for Fund A General Fund in the following amounts. So we are taking $7,979.50 from budget code 1620.112 cleaner and moving that to 1620.448 cleaning services. And we are taking $25,188.65 from 7110.20 parks and equipment and moving that to 7110.440 parks, professional and technical services. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Do you like me to explain? these?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had budgeted for staff cleaner. And for numerous reasons, that hasn't moved over to payroll. We've been auditing the vouchers, so I've already done one of these budget modifications, but I got a little behind, so we're just moving. And then she's going on staff as of this week.
For the
So-
second half of the year,
Yeah,
to make it easy. Yep.
so, and then the second one, we will have to do another budget modification to fix this. But the fence, we didn't plan for the fence project. So I'm just, before we pay that, I'm moving the money from our parks equipment into there, and then once we get all the quotes for what we're doing there, we'll move more money into that budget line. In order to approve the expenditure, we should have them in. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Okay. So next up is, we're scheduling a public hearing for local law A of 2025, adopting the community preservation plan. So I'll make a motion that whereas the town board of the town of Rochester is considering the adoption of local law A of 2025, a local law to adopt the town of Rochester Community Preservation Plan pursuant to General Municipal Law 6S. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board hereby schedules a public hearing to be held at the regularly scheduled July business meeting on July 10th, 2025 at the Harold Lipton Community Center at 6:30 p.m. to hear all interested parties on proposed local law A of 2025, and be it further resolved that the town clerk shall circulate notice.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. So the next one, we'll fill in B. So I'll go ahead and make the motion as presented on the agenda for local law B, where the public hearing will immediately following that of local law A.
Okay.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. So next I have my notes on this refund. All right. So we got a request. I got a request for refunds that were permits that were taken out in April, and the request came in this month. So if it's not within the same month, the town can't just issue a refund which is how we would typically do it, the board needs to pass a resolution. So it needs to have the name and the amount. So we got a request from Alex Camboris for the refund of a permit to build a garage, which was $855. And then a request from Faith Foreman. Oh. I forgot to write what that was for, but it's a, hold on. Or a pen. A refund for a fence permit, of $100. Okay, so I'll go ahead and make the motion. That the Town of Rochester Town Board hereby authorizes the refund of building permit fees of the amount of $855 to Alex Camboris and $100 to Faye Foreman. And that the building department and supervisor's office, it should just be the supervisor's office, is hereby authorized to process said refunds accordingly. Any discussion?
None of the work was started, we didn't do any inspections,
No.
site visits, no administrative work was done on them.
And they're not refunding the zoning permit fee.
Building department supports it.
Yes. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Okay, that's it for resolutions. Now we have a very robust discussion portion of the meeting. And if I missed anything, or you guys if there's other things you'd like to discuss, we can do that at the town board priority updates. I also, the way I did the amended agenda, my notes are on the agenda, so you guys can follow along or bring up whatever. These are just the points that I wanted to make. So discussion item A, so this is community housing plan, process and public engagement. One of the things that we've learned and one of the values that this board has expressed repeatedly is that we want to really have a very rich community engagement process. And it's something that we're learning how to do. We're not going to do it perfectly every time, but I feel like we have an opportunity right now, given that we know we'd like to do this, to begin the process of working on a community housing plan. Just for context, we did do the Home Rule Authority request, and we're hopeful that our state legislators will pass that enabling legislation in January of next year. That legislation would allow us to do the process as it is outlined in the proposed law. And we would then need to pass that as a local law. So there's a lot of moving parts, but I feel like we know that we're going to want to have a community housing plan when we're doing that to help contextualize the real estate transfer tax and to show the community what we're planning to do and how we're planning to address some of these issues. So I just wanted to open up the discussion and hear from you about how we want to think about this process and what our goals might be for 2025. Because once 2026 comes, it's going to move pretty quickly, like we found with the community preservation plan. And I want us to I think it would be great if we got started before 2026.
Is there unexpended budget for this in 2025?
What we do have is, and we kind of stuck a little bit of money in the community planning budget. And Charlotte wanted to use that for housing and for consultants. So that's what we have.
About pro services, yeah. You have like a pool of money for,
What I just described is the budget code that we would use for professional services for planning or like that sort of thing.
And how much is unspent out of whatever?
We haven't touched that,
And how much is in the,
$10,000.
and do you have a recommendation of how much you think would be a ballpark figure would be appropriate for 2026?
I'm not really sure. I think it depends on if we want to do a grassroots. You know, I think there's some community input gathering we could do this year that won't cost a lot of money. I think if we wanted to hire a consultant to help us take information and turn it into a plan document, that's gonna be $25,000. If we want to have a consultant guide us through a process of community engagement and like lead that, that's gonna be like $50,000 to $75,000.
And those would be 2026 expenditures.
Yes, unless we had a quick turnaround grant that we could get.
Did
Would-
we want to explore engaging a consultant to help with the grant writing process at all, or where are we thinking in terms of timeline for that kind of thing?
I think that is not something that we budgeted for, so I think it's sort of, we have to think of it as an expenditure. Like thinking about our priorities in terms of expenditures, like the amount that we would spend on that could also go a long way. You know, in another way, so I think. The board has been I know how you have done some work on it, the board's been a little neutral, I think, about moving forward with it budgetarily this year. But if you had like specific suggestions or dollar amounts, I think that
Mhm.
might help. So,
Yeah, I just wanted to test the waters, because we can engage, Millennium at any point to do their little 10-minute presentation to us. I'm just trying to figure out the roadmap of
I mean,
how,
Yeah,
and-
it depends on the price though, cause then we have to, for procurement policy, we. have to
yeah,
hear
yeah,
about
like,
that
like
in
the
2
bottom
hours.
line to just get access to their database is like $5,000, for example. And then it's like tiered up from there depending on how much hand holding they would do with us.
That's just access to their search database,
Yeah,
not for them writing anything for us, just.
well,
access
what
to
they
their-
do is they come out, they sit down with you, they figure out like what are your needs, and then they give you like a curated list of what they think is doable. And what's useful from what I hear from other municipalities that have used it is they kind of give you an idea of what the timeline for different grants is and what's, likely and what's just not worth wasting your time on. That's like the big value add for them.
I mean, I think spending money on something like that can be valuable, can be valuable because you're leveraging dollars.
Yeah.
What I think would be perfect to make the decision is sort of some sort of analysis of what the cost would be and what the potential probable returns could be, so that we can gauge sort of the return on investment.
We do also have a certified grant writer on the board. Just keep. I think 5,000 is a fee for that personally, but I'm open to seeing on to the discussion of it for next year's budget if that's something that we all want to agree on. I'm not opposed, but I'm also not like, yeah, right away, you know what I mean? I'm not sold completely.
Yeah.
So.
And I think to the general question, I think it's appropriate that we allocate some money for this general purpose, whether it's allocated towards grant research or whatever. I think that
for the community housing plan, yeah, I agree. So I guess what I'm hearing is. And I think this is gonna come up for many of our projects. Is that part of the work we wanna see happen is what are the funding opportunities that could fund something like this and how accessible are those grants? There's one that I have to see if it's still available, but it's like the $25,000 grant that could have been used to fund the community preservation plan that like a lot of towns just got when they applied for it. If that, I don't know what the, you might know, Charlotte, I don't know what the scope of that particular grant is, but there's things like that where
Who was the issue, who was the funder, was it nice?
New York State, that one was in New York State.
That was a
Grant.
state grant. State, depending on the sector, it all depends on what the
Yeah.
details are of what sector it came from. That's really, you have to match our mission statement and
Right.
what we're looking for from the project to the funder.
Yeah, like that one, I don't know if it was specifically, for preservation.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
the-
yeah, like there's different like sub, like almost if you think of them as like marketing kind of categories in grant writing that make us more marketable to get funded.
Well, yeah, it's
You
like
know,
there's a
that's
lot of
the
money
stuff.
floating around for creating these foundational documents, like a lot. for-
Yeah.
For, flood mitigation or housing or whatever, they seem to really be available.
It's in the yeah, like the, the devil's in the details when it comes to grants, it's if they take your specific county and then if they take
Yeah.
your specific region along with your county, like there's
Yeah.
those types of check marks and like checks and balances you have to go through with them, which is why you do need someone that's like
Yeah,
on it, focused
100%.
on it, and I
Yeah.
get it. And yeah, like rural, like that's like our biggest one out here is there's so much rural money for anything that, and we qualify as the highest characteristic of rural according to the USDA, so any USDA funding. As long as, we write it and
Yeah.
just have it and make sure it's a grant that lines up with the project.
Oh,
I
for
mean,
sure.
It should be like,
Yeah. And that we have like the resources to actually execute on them.
One thing,
Important.
Yeah.
my office now has a little bit more capacity.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, we kind of started this last.
So I guess Alexis, if you wanted to do maybe what Zolly was kind of asking,
Yeah,
I could also ask my new assistant to start putting together a spreadsheet and just kind of see what she finds.
yeah,
So if we're able to find some things that we feel like are accessible and match some of our priorities and goals, with staffing, that I think that would be a good comparison.
yeah,
maybe.
absolutely. Yeah, that's great because I've already started collecting a bunch of stuff that's being trickled in from the committees and
Yeah,
that's great because they're already, thinking about it and they're excited.
so we can start making a database and then we can just see like, hey, is this kind of like a lot? Then maybe we want to just hire someone to help us do the prep of the applications like we did for the Richmond ones. Which,
Yeah, like that's where, I think that's where sorry, I did trip, sorry.
no, I'm not talking,
Sorry, I didn't want to forget, I was gonna say, that's where I think like my disconnect with like not being so gung ho to hire a full consultant and pay like the $5,000 price, because. I knew a couple different grants, like databases, search engines that we could maybe like train Stacy in-house to be able to search the grants that the different committees identified to see if we meet the qualifications, so that then we can be like, okay, as layman's terms, we meet them, let's get a consultant on it then,
Yeah.
and then.
Yeah, take
to
out,
try to
be
see.
able to leverage their time better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So like
for
that's
sure.
what I wanna explore those options,
Yeah.
because I think that,
It's really useful skill set for her too.
yeah, and you get, just from experience from writing grants and reading grants, you get better grants from people who work at the organizations than you do from grant farms.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You get more
Okay.
meaning, if it's a board of people who are actually from like that, like our county or our area reading those grants, it's more meaningful if it has that like more personal, like
Yeah, totally.
detailed touch to it, cause yeah, a lot of the grant farms are just, I'm sure they're all ChatGPT now, but.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say. That's the other strategy is we could do the spaghetti on the wall. I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah, you can do kind of
But
like a little
people do
combo
it.
of the two, if we got
Yeah.
ChatGPT and a good
Yeah.
grant research, we could maybe.
I would like to keep it more
Support.
soulful too, though. Yeah, with you.
Yeah, same, yeah, I'm like, I don't know, man, when I was, got certified, it was human, right,
Yeah.
farms, but now I know.
it happened very quickly.
It's so
It
fun.
did, no one has watched Will Smith movies. That's all I'm gonna say, man. Yeah.
So the other thing is that there might also be opportunities because we will be the first town in Ulster County to be doing this.
We'd be the first town outside of Southland
So
First time in Ulster County to do what?
to claim home rule and get the house.
Oh, home rule, right, yeah.
RATT
So-
for housing.
I know just some organizations offer some, patterns for progress mentioned helping out another town for something else. So I think we can also engage some of the housing organizations and see what they might help us.
Yeah, there's a couple, really good, like newer housing, like nonprofits that are coming up in Kingston, like I don't know if anyone, Housing Strong, I went to their housing summit at the end of April, which was really lovely. Patterns was there, and they had a lot of really great examples from other towns to show like a really wide variety of housing needs, and yeah, Patterns is one of the, that I think have, Ulster Strong would be another one that might be good to get in on. They seem like a really, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Energized, volunteer, like basis nonprofit, like they seem.
So I think this is a good brainstorm session. It sounds like we want to see what funding opportunities there are before we really delve into doing like community outreach. But I also want us to set some timeline goals. One question I had is, should we create like a special working group or task force to lead the effort, like a smaller group of the housing advisory committee with other people? Like, do we want to do something like that? And if so, maybe we should have a goal of, like, we could think about how we would want to do those appointments and try to make a committee of people that want to maybe assist with this, and then they could help contextualize like what types of funding opportunities would we be looking for, what funding expenditures. What do you guys think about that? So how would we want to put a task force or a committee of that together?
Well, I'm still trying to figure out what is it, like, what is, I think we need to figure out what we want this committee, this board, these grants to be doing. So is the goal to produce a document similar to the CPP, to produce maps with areas, which we know we've already identified parcels? Is the goal to have a more active engagement with the community? Like, I think we should figure out and maybe have a couple sessions or a session as a board to say, like, what do we want to produce at the end of this? Like, what, obviously fixing housing issues is the goal, but what are the documents we're proposing to produce? And then we can kind of figure out what makes sense in terms of the committee.
Yeah, and that also brings me back to, I was curious where we are in terms of registering as a housing, what is this?
Pro-housing.
Pro-housing community.
Mhm.
And because that unlocks like its own kind of
Yeah.
roadmap for what to,
Mhm.
you know, for that particular source of funding. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty structured.
So I've been working with Kai. I've done the first 3 things and I'm just kind of waiting to hear. I had reached out to him to ask him, there's a portal and I have to submit things. And they're just empty folders. So I reached out to Kai asking how to get the direction on
I'm
what.
sorry, who's counting?
He's county planning. He's
Okay.
the house
These are county housing.
planning
County planner.
planner.
County
Yeah.
housing planner.
He's
Yeah.
he's a senior planner in charge of housing. I think
Right.
is like
What's
official.
his last name?
Lord LOURD-farmer.
Cool name.
Yeah.
So-
I knew it, I saw him.
Huh?
I saw him briefly the other, I wanted to stay and make sure I asked him.
So that's where we're at with that. But I think I guess I feel like we are at capacity for what the board can handle. So I guess what I was thinking is we want to move forward with planning for the community housing project that we would want to hit the ground running on early 2026. We obviously we don't want to spend too much money until we know that the Home Rule Authority legislation passes. So what I was thinking is if we had like a working group that could start planning and doing more in-depth public engagement to like get that like, how do we really engage with the community? We've started doing that. We've had the short survey. We had 2 forums, just like, I think that's kind of.
Two
Are you-
streams.
Are you talking about actually definition of starting the community engagement, or are you talking about creating a plan of how the community engagement activity?
I think I'm talking about both. Like, I think there would need to be a plan, and does that involve working with a consultant to create a plan, or does that, I guess I'm just thinking, maybe we just, or we could ask
Right.
the Housing Advisory Committee, hey, how do you think we should move forward with this, given that the Home Rule Authority legislation wouldn't, we don't know for certain it's gonna pass. But we don't want to wait until January to start working on what we think good solutions might be.
So what does that subcommittee look like in terms of where we're reaching for members?
I think the Housing Advisory Committee, and then what we've done in the past for this type of working group actually is the board has sort of come together and put forward like our own selection of someone that we talk to, instead of doing like an official commission where we do like an advertisement.
That's how this was done, actually.
Yes, that's how this was done.
Yeah.
So,
I don't mind doing it that way to pick the committee, the task force, sorry,
we could also ask our housing advisory committee is amazing.
Yeah,
We could
yeah,
also ask
Yeah,
them.
I don't know why that's what they're advising us on. I think
Yeah.
we offer it to them first. If they're like, no, we don't have enough people that have time to do it, then we can say. But we should at least get their ideas on it. We probably have most of them wanting to be on the other committee anyway.
maybe. I think that we should offer it, like whoever wants from the housing committee is welcome to join, from the housing advisory committee is welcome to throw their hand up and join. But I do think that we should all appoint someone else outside of the housing committee. I adore the housing committee. I think that they have a lot of great energy. They are more than capable of doing this, but I think that if the goal of, which I think I'm hearing like from the rest of you guys, like, you know, back at me, that from what I'm saying, that the goal is to make sure that it's housing for anyone, you know, mark any age group, any demographic in town, that we need to have that on this task force and the people who are giving us recommendations. So the housing committee is pretty as diverse as we could make it with who we applied at the time, but I think that if we each talk to someone in our worlds, like we all kind of live in a different part of town, we all, yeah, I feel like we could make it a little more diverse to get a really good working core group that. I think the housing committee is also tired. They just got 2 new members for the first time in 3 years, and so they've been doing a lot of really good outreach work, so I wanna make sure they have some support with it too, if.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them on this.
So I think, oh, sorry, Michael.
Yeah, I don't think they should just take it on as the housing committee,
Yeah.
but I think we should consult them about the process. And then, yeah, maybe it's 4 members of the housing committee, somebody from ag, somebody from youth and what's the name? Creation.
Senior and youth recreation commission.
You know, historic preservation, like,
Yeah.
we should have a core group. Offer a core group of those spots to the housing committee and then bring in some of those other advisory committees.
Okay, so I just want to synthesize what we've talked about in this discussion. Moving backwards. So 1, what we're gonna do is we're gonna consult with the Housing Advisory Committee and ask them how they think we should move forward with this project. And suggest the idea of creating a task force. Also, we will consult with the numerous housing organizations, some of which we have pretty good relationships with. And we can also consult with the county about, like, hey, how should we move forward with this? And just get some ideas and bring those back together. If we have stuff in 2 weeks.
The county has like a roadmap on how to do a municipal housing action plan as a housing smart communities. It is something that I can apply for. Like I said, they have some consultants that like aren't as large as the one that we're using for like the whole town, for the two corridor inventory that we ended up with, but,
Okay,
so I can see, I think it's been 3 years since we got that contract, so we got much for a while there. We can
Yeah.
apply again, so I'm happy to like, if you want to, like, inquire with Kites.
sure. I think this,
Possibility once the other contract like finishes up with that console.
Yeah.
Getting this one.
one of the, I mean, I get, one of the reasons why this, it's not just about the isolated project of what we've asked for home rule authority legislation and the real estate transfer tax and community housing, but it's not just about that. There are other tools that we feel like we could really strengthen to solve the housing needs, and I think having community engagement on this topic and creating a like plan that will work for our community is not gonna be wasted effort. I guess that's kind of also how I'm thinking about it. So
Oh, yes, yeah, I don't think it.
so we're gonna do what I just said, and then also, and I think having a 2-week goal for this is good. We're gonna try to put together some lists of potential grant opportunities, deadlines, requirements, that sort of thing. I can do that in my office, but I might have staff members reach out to board members and have you guys, if you have stuff, you can send it. But then, and in addition to research, and then I think you were gonna kind of do a
Yeah.
little bit.
So are we keeping it housing focused right now?
No, I think that would be great if we have a lot of those opportunities, but I think in general, I think when you're looking for grant opportunities, if you find.
Oh, yeah, I think.
I think we just, yeah,
Yeah.
Like full board and then.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but that just
Spread it all.
came out of this
Yeah, it
discussion.
came out of the housing discussion.
Okay,
So
so,
Take that as general.
I still think if we're gonna ask the housing committee, we should have an idea of like what the end state goal is, and maybe it's not a plan like that, but maybe we wanna put together a larger plan document. Municipal
Like-
housing action
Like
plan,
a housing action plan that has these 5 steps that we need to take,
yeah, so I think
to
if
start the
that's.
goals and
You think we read this one?
you don't have to read the whole thing, right? I'll send you this, but I'm saying like, it's like establish a community outreach campaign, create a municipal housing action
Yeah.
plan. Adopt a short-term, like we've done a lot of the things on the list here for the
Yeah.
housing smart, but like those are like to the outreach campaign, like they've kind of been doing that for the past like year and a half. But doing an actual like plan and trying to do the steps of it, it is part of what we've tasked them with for this, but I do think that they need some support, and we should branch out.
Yeah, and so
for that
maybe
plan.
the actual municipal housing action plan is is the overarching goal we're looking to put together. And ask their feedback on how that we should go about doing that. Is it public forums? Is it looking at consultants? Is it? And see what they think about that.
I mean, I disagree with you because I feel like that is a goal, but I think what we're wanting to know is what should we be working on in the next 6 months? Like we did this big thing, we kind of have a win. We want to see this happen with the real estate transfer tax, community housing plan, but like, what are our next steps so that we're not waiting until January to take any action? I think that's the question, and I think if that involves thinking about that type of plan document over, and that could become a community housing plan, or if that opportunity dissolves, we would still have the document. But I guess to me, it's a question. Like, I don't want to lose momentum, but I also don't want to do anything that's wasted effort.
They got a mock scope of work here. Sounds. So like what a
Yeah.
typical is for.
Yeah. But I think if they come back and say, we have no idea what you're asking us for, then we'll. But I've had conversations with them about this already, so I don't think it'll be like.
Ooh. Sorry, so the first step is engaging, stakeholders and community engagement in the mock-up. And they've done most of it, but we haven't engaged any developers.
Right.
I mean, I engage developers all the time for us, and I harass Kevin O'Connor from Robco to try to build something in our town, but he has not yet. Not that he hasn't tried, thanks, Kevin. But, and engage with our others, so like maybe it's that we need, cause working in the housing world and looking, we have affordable housing in our code, we have short-term, like we have all the things that everyone tells me at every conference and panel I go to be to get more housing and to make sure there's affordable housing, the only thing we don't have is developers. And so I wonder if that, sorry, I just saw that, I got distracted thinking like, oh, that's where they need to go, that's what we're missing, that's the key of the stakeholder pile that we need to get the engagement on, so maybe it's that. Until January, we can get to there, it's like, okay, you guys start.
I
with
mean,
the
that would be a really
that's-
interesting engagement projecting.
Yeah,
Not a lot of
yeah,
development.
they were, I don't think they knew you were. They went to Kingston and to ask the ones there, maybe. Not our town. But you know, maybe that's it, like go to surrounding towns and see what developers are working. Since
Yeah,
There's not a lot in
sure.
our area and like engage with them and find out why, like what is it in our zoning process, what is it in our. Whatever that's,
Yeah,
I mean, we know lack of infrastructure is a big one for most
Mhm.
developers here,
Yeah, they
but
will
other than
travel.
that, what's the?
Yeah.
What are we missing?
Mhm.
Maybe Las Vegas sign. Thank you guys, sorry. I didn't go off tangent.
Great, I think we have some good concrete things for the next 2 weeks. And we'll reach out to the Housing Advisory Committee to get their thoughts on some of these ideas and what their recommendations for what we should be investing in the next, investing time and maybe money in the next 6 months. So I want to follow up, amplified sound forum, community engagement topic. I think we really felt like this was a priority, but then in an effort to not have events, we wanted to engage with the public, and that hasn't happened for me. I don't know if it's happened, if you guys have done any engagement. But I thought if this is still a priority, we should maybe just set some goals for how we wanna start looking at this issue and coming up with.
yeah, didn't
solutions.
we, last time we touched this, we talked about seeing how code enforcement was going to do with like a letter, seeing, given a certain period of time, but we could put a calendar on that in terms of, or a timeline, in terms of how much time we want to give it before we move on to something more structured.
Yeah, I think also we talked about engaging with like smaller groups
Yeah.
and that we were like, oh, let's follow up out of the meeting one-on-one.
Yeah.
So right now, there haven't been a lot of events due to weather. So I think we'll just have to see. There have been some events that have created a lot of traffic issues, but I mean, I so far have not heard the bigger concerts and things like that are later.
Yeah.
In the season, so I know that they did proactive communications to venues, and I've been meaning to follow up with some of the venues that we've heard about that have regular music,
Yeah,
but
I'm like, I'm still interested in helping out there, if you want to sit down, and talk about it.
so should that be a concrete goal as you and I
Yeah,
can meet?
yeah,
Okay,
that's sure, yeah.
okay. And then I can follow up with code enforcement. We do meet weekly, so, but the only event issues that have really come to me so far have been traffic and then maybe some use special events that maybe aren't permitted kind of thing, but not like the amplified sound yet in the season.
So what you're saying is we can address like a small selection of issues, it's not just going to be the amplified sound issue.
Well, I guess I was, in terms of like seeing how code enforcement is able to handle it. I was just saying, we don't really have any test case for that right now, just because of the weather and what there is one place that I have gotten complaints about. But that has been reported to the office. And that has more to do with not following a site plan approval, not like. But I think if you and I could meet and we could start talking about what stakeholder groups would be and like hearing about what the impacts of legislation would be from both sides, I think is kind of what I think would be interesting for us. So I do have a general planning board topic at the end of the discussion, but for this one, and Michael, I don't know if you want to talk about this or if you want me to bring this up, but the planning board had a request for change of legislation.
Is this where they're requesting to have the alternate participate in meetings?
Yes, I
Sit
just,
at the table, participate in meetings.
what I witnessed is they want to have, I want to get the feedback from the board on this.
Yeah, I thought they were gonna send us something.
I thought they were gonna send us something, so I put it on the agenda, but our law requires that the alternates sit at a separate table.
Hmm.
And then they can't participate at all unless they are seated.
Do they get a little hat?
No, but it used to be, I was an alternate and I would sit at a separate table and I got my own maps
Oh,
though.
you got your own maps.
So that was nice. And I, went to every meeting. So they have witnessed other planning boards and the alternate sits at the table and can look at the materials, and in some planning boards, they allow the alternate to ask questions. So that is what the this planning board is going to request. They do not want the alternate to participate.
Yeah, if
Well,
I
we wanna sit at the
remember,
same
if
table.
I remember, they were all unanimous that they wanted them to sit at the table. I think close unanimous, they should ask questions, and I don't think anybody thought they should participate till seated.
I mean, what was the stance on questions?
Ask
They want them to
questions.
be able to ask
Isn't that
questions.
participating?
Yes, I think it's participating.
Asking questions is participating, because if you
Yeah.
ask
I
one
agree.
barbed question, you can totally derail a project.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm not clear on the nuance between participating in discussion versus asking questions. The alternate, I think, can also ask questions as a member of the public. If they really feel strongly about it.
Mm.
But not every- not every-
They wouldn't be able to be seated.
So I just wanted to, I think it's reasonable for us to allow alternates to sit at the table, and that's a very
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah, they
local
should have
law.
access to all the materials anyway, or else how
Yeah.
are they gonna get trained? To do that?
I think it sounds like we're all sort of like, no, they shouldn't be able to talk, basically.
I think that's correct. I think it brings up an ethical issue if they can ask questions or if they're not seated in that moment, if you're acting as an alternate.
Yeah, I mean, planning boards can be 5 to 7 members in town.
Our law is 7.
So,
Yeah, so, but the max in state law is 7. So where our law puts it at the max, we have it at the max. So I think allowing an alternate now, when you have 7, to be an 8, also puts us in a slightly
Yeah,
Yeah.
complicated situation. And the state law is like, they're allowed, like, when they're seated members are allowed to participate, so.
Mhm.
If you're not serving, if you're an alternate, that's not in the capacity as a board member, I don't think it's appropriate.
I think we all agree, but are you disagreeing that they should sit at a separate table?
No, I think it would be wonderful if they all sat at the same table.
Okay.
I think they should have better chair.
They should
But I
have,
think it's
they should
definitely-
have, like a yellow pinion or something,
It's a definition of what seated means
yeah.
in
Right.
terms, I mean, seated,
See,
meaning
I know,
in their capacity as
Correct.
an acting,
as in the chair has
Literally
seated them.
sitting. at
Yeah.
the table
Opposed to
versus
sitting in
them
a
not
chair.
Right,
participating.
yes,
Sorry, I
our
wasn't-
law specifically says they have to sit at a separate table.
which is.
Which is hilarious.
I think we should just strike that,
Mhm.
and then they can sit wherever they want,
They can sit wherever they want, including at the table, but,
or in the audience,
but
but,
I would definitely say that asking questions is participating.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and you can always ask questions outside of a meeting to one person.
Mhm.
If you're really trying to get clarification, so. Okay, we'll be getting that. I wanted to get your guys' feedback. I thought we were gonna get it and then I could just ask you, but now we put the cart before the horse.
I mean, we could also just make.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if somebody presents that local law, we can do that.
You guys don't have to wait. Might be pause for a moment here. You guys don't have to wait for me, but I have to take a quick 2-minute recess to check on my baby. So.
Okay. Okay. I think,
Hold up the plants in a long way.
yeah, well, I did reach out to the chair and he was very like, I'm not sure we actually want to do that kind of thing, but I think I wanted to kind of punt this to the board. Because I think my understanding is based on what I've seen at like Heritage Day is our boards and commissions and that type of thing can happen, like a transaction.
Mhm.
But it would, when it's received as funds or donation to the town.
Okay,
So any use of those funds has to be, sanctioned.
okay.
Now, when we receive funds for a specific purpose, we have to use them for that, but that's my understanding, but I
It
didn't,
could also be budget relief, right?
yeah. So as long as there's really not an issue with it, I don't think there's an issue, but we just need to make sure that as long as there's not a legal reason why we shouldn't do that, I personally don't have an issue with it as long as it's in line with town events and everyone conducts themselves as town officials and like something like Heritage Day, for example, might be a good opportunity to do something like that. But
What my concern, and it's what less with the ECC, because they're not a decision-making body, would be that if, say, the planning board were to have some sort of a fundraiser, that
oh, right, yeah,
there's a potential for somebody
Influence.
to
Yeah.
exercise undue influence.
right, yeah.
And that's something I'd be very careful about. For the ECC, it's an advisory board. That doesn't have any decision-making power on its own, so.
So Mary Lou went on vacation the day after our last meeting, so I've only asked her really important type questions. Since she's been on vacation. But I can follow up with her and just see what I know that there are either things like this or things like this adjacent where like someone else handles it and then donates the money kind of a thing. So so there are creative ways, I think, to think about,
Did they raise this issue?
Yeah, they're
Alexis
asking.
asked me at the last meeting and I wanted to follow up, but then I also wanted to hear what the board thought about that type of thing. And then, but also it sounded like there's not like a real plan around it and they don't.
No, they just want to fundraisers. They want to make sure they're being responsible about around money. And I guess like as committees start doing more activities in the community and money's gonna come into it at some point, like making cute little t-shirts or something like that. So being responsible and
Mhm.
having a plan for how to handle and spend the money.
Okay, so it sounds like what we want to do is have some sort of guideline over like, what's best practice and also what's law around fundraising as like up to a body or like, each of these advisory boards has like a budget that they use. So I think that's we allow them we can do grant applications and things like that, but
You earmark donations for specific.
you have to. If you receive a donation for a specific purpose, you have to use it for that. So that's one reason you could reject the donation if you don't want to use it for the purpose that it's being offered for.
But I guess what I'm wondering, legally, could a donation be made on behalf of the ECC to the town? And then it could go into the budget line item for that? Or-
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying if someone offers a donation, you have to accept the board. We have to accept all donations. That's why we have that at our business meeting. But we can't deposit money into the bank account if it's a donation, if you guys haven't authorized it. So what happens is for example, when we accept a donation, maybe this is a learning moment. When we accept a donation in an agenda that says $500 for the purchase of turkeys, you guys are saying, yes, we are accepting this donation for the purchase of turkeys, then we have to use it for the purchase of turkeys. So,
Unrestricted gift.
huh?
Unless it's an unrestricted gift.
And that also happens. We do also receive donations that just go into the general fund as a general donation. So yes, someone could offer a donation to the town for use of something for the ECC and if we accepted it, it has to be used for that purpose.
But if they want to fundraise, that's a possible mechanism.
I think so. That's what when we had Heritage Day and the recreation department did an event where they collected money.
Yeah.
You purchase tickets to do the pie contest.
Mhm.
That money was received as a general donation. That's how we received it.
Okay, so generally, these committees are not going to be having their own accounts that they're handling themselves. They should all go through us. I'm just making sure I have it
Yeah.
right. And that everything should be specifically earmarked, and if it's not, it's marked unrestricted gift.
Yeah, and then we can use it however we want.
Right.
But I have to get more like legal counsel on like just exactly what we should and shouldn't
All right,
allow.
so put a pin in it and tell them like this is the general idea, but hold off until we have a council.
Yeah, yeah, in terms of like fundraising.
Yeah.
Because that could also get into, you could also get into some ethical, even if you're
Oh,
not on the
yeah.
planning board.
Like being in the Bay Area, some of these towns raise massive amounts of money, and that's really and political about how it's
Right.
done, spent.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one, and frankly, I don't really want to see that kind of thing happening, but. Okay. So I will follow up with Mary Lou when she's back next week. And then, you guys should think about it, like, I'll share what the legal counsel is, but if there's any. What do we want to see, like, as a board, we can set policies.
I was gonna say, sounds like a good policy.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I like the idea of a policy and maybe like a form so that we know when they're,
Mhm.
where, when, why and how,
But I do think like,
and so that it's blanket.
yeah, I think, yeah, to sell something, I do think would have to is something that to me is not necessarily, I think there might be ways to do it, but I have seen like t-shirt sales and things like that. So.
Yeah, like I know the HPC for the Ash Tree Festival, they would sell shirts, but it was
Right.
probably to pay for the cost of making a shirt.
Right, yeah. Okay. So, all right, so this is just to alert you. There's a couple of alerts.
Who's not, who's selling yours?
Well, I think we had the resignation was, so the term is 7 years. So when you appoint a new assessor, they just fill,
Finish the term.
yeah.
Is it 7 or 6?
oh, maybe it's
I
6.
think it's 6.
How does it say?
So, okay. So so the term for appointed assessors expires for all of them, September 30th of 2025. So we have to make that appointment or reappointment before then. And I just we don't have to wait until September 30th to do this. So I just wanted to alert you.
How long would the reappointment term be?
6 years. So it begins October 1st, 2025 and ends September 30th, 2031.
Can I motion now?
Actually, let's see.
We have a whole reeval that we just.
Oh, yeah,
started.
our city council or town board approves the reappointment and then we complete the form.
I'll wait.
Let's wait.
I
We
won't
can
miss
do it
something
next
paper,
meeting.
But I'm just saying.
Let's wait until the business meeting. I just wanted to, if you guys want to do it that soon, we can do it that soon.
I would like to secure our assessor knowing that we just started, we're in the first few months of a 3-year-long
Yeah.
reeval, and so.
Lock that guy down.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying,
It's-
you're locking down.
So this also is, they can resign, there can still be
Yeah.
staffing issues. I think, I don't know if you guys know this, but assessors can be elected and but you can also have a local law that they're not. I think this term length is like is a holdover from that, where your assessor would get elected into office for a 6-year term. But anyway, I think it is related to that. Okay, so it sounds like you guys are fine taking care of this sooner. And we can talk. If anyone wants to come to me with any thoughts or ideas, you're welcome to do that. Okay, so another alert. Now we changed this and I forgot that we changed it. In our new code, we changed this to November 1st. Which is,
Why do we do that?
I don't know, because we never made the decision on
Oh, 'cause we
time.
never, that makes sense.
And but then we kind of made it, so we setting the short-term rental cap, we have an annual decision that we have to make. It's in the law that it happens after the final assessment roll, which comes out on Tuesday. And then we have to set the cap for the non-owner occupied short-term transient rentals. Now I'm pretty sure the permit application opens in October. So I feel like we should just take care of this sooner than that. But what I was thinking is maybe we should, one of the things that we got back from those referrals that I sent for the community preservation plan is the boards and commissions wanted more than 1 month, more than 1 meeting to look at something. So I thought maybe we just refer this and give them a couple months to get back to us on. Like, I think it might be a good thing for us to refer this topic out. What do you guys think? Yeah. The Housing Advisory Committee gives us a referral letter every single year. But unprompted, and so I'm like, let's just ask.
Cause they know that it's August 1st and in the first meeting in August, so they know that in June they always start.
Yeah,
What is the cap?
Zero.
right now it's 0.
Well, no, it's not 0,
Zero
it's
new
not to,
No, we did
oh,
0.
did we do it? We didn't do that verbiage?
Nope.
Oh, that's right, we went around in circles for, yeah, I remember now.
Don't
It's
describe
your-
what we were doing.
So,
Never mind.
so that means all of them out there are technically not allowed?
No,
It's a bit-
it's
New.
we have more than 2% of our housing stock, and
Okay.
so the thought was that the cap is new applications.
Got it.
And so it's every year you're just getting more, the number just increases,
Mhm.
so we wanted to see if any of them dropped off.
I-
Like, so,
Have they?
Yeah, I'd be, well, I'd
I
be
can-
interested in the details from the building department.
Yeah.
yeah, okay,
Also knowing, like, are they getting a bunch of people, like, I can't believe you're not allowed permits, or is it
Yes.
people-
I mean, we've been getting that.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious to know how many of those calls, like, how many people are interested.
Yeah, is
the
it
number
fairly-
one question, sorry.
Oh, no.
That real estate agents, when they call and they're asking for tax information, it's like
Yeah.
the number one question, what is your non-owner occupied?
I want
So-
that.
But it also
They can't-
makes it makes certain housing stock unattractive because they're looking to do that.
Mhm.
And if we don't have a lot of permits available, then the houses wouldn't be purchased for that reason.
You know, our owner occupied is pretty generous right now.
I'm just saying, just because a lot of people are calling and asking doesn't mean that should
Right.
change our decision,
Right,
because
right.
So if they were to drop off, how would we allot? Would we do a lottery or it's just first come, first serve for people that?
so we went around about this a lot last year. We were gonna create like a floater switch. So it's like, we were gonna say, what's our current number of non-owner occupied? And it has to stay at that level, right? But then when I consulted with the building department, they were like, please don't do that. They're like, you know,
Cause the verbiage.
give us a
confused
number or
that
make
we
it
were gonna
0.
make it- How we were gonna term the cap wasn't just a number, we were terming it so that they
Percentage or
couldn't
something.
go over 2% of the assessor's rolled
Mm-hmm.
number of houses in town.
Mhm.
So that if it did go under that number, that's the 2%, they could issue more, but the verbiage in it would have confused too many second homeowners that aren't normal to zoning code law to know what I'm saying, so they're like, please just make it 0.
Yeah,
Cause it'll save us 20 minutes on a phone call, on each phone call, you know,
yeah.
so.
And for owner occupied, is there like a proportion of time that they have to be living in it?
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
so how?
180 days.
180.
So do you guys like the
Yeah.
idea of referring the question
I,
to our other boards.
I'm just curious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
curious to see what everybody, we haven't talked about this in a while, so.
Yeah, I like referring our stuff to the other committees, even if it's not something that's. Like, why would you, I can't think of a committee that housing wouldn't be relevant to, right?
Yeah.
I'll try to make an example, but any other thing that wouldn't, like, I would, like, if we were deciding what color to paint the bathrooms at the park, like. Yes, the ag committee might not really know what color we should professionally paint that, but it's still nice to hear their input as a.
We just decided that last, didn't ask them. In fact, I
Michael,
think we authorized supervisor to.
Ruin my,
fix that.
actually, we vetoed the decision.
Supervisor wanted,
Yeah.
wanted color.
Fur it out.
Okay, so well.
I-
Two questions, one. Do we wanna, I wanted to, like, what are we asking? Like, what's the relevant information? I think the more specific we can be in referral requests, the better. Like, can you give us X, Y, or Z input? So I wanted to know what that should be, and then if we brainstorm that, then I can, typically we do a referral through resolution.
Yeah.
And so I could put that on our next meeting agenda.
When we get the tax roll next week, it's set on here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would
'cause
like,
think it
oh,
would be
let's start
nice
thinking
to,
about
like,
this
give
now.
them a list of the house, like with the referral, be like, this is how many housing units are on the tax, so that they don't have to try to dig through the assessment.
Yeah.
Pages of like, this is the assessor's roll for 2025 of the number of houses,
That
this is
would
how
be
many
nice.
owner
Okay.
occupied. We have,
Yep.
this is how many non, just like the basic
Number,
data on it, so that they can at least get an overview.
uses, non, and owner, okay.
The assessor's role doesn't have a number of housing units, it has have numbers of houses.
It has,
And
a
it's
single,
A
wait,
single and.
single, multifamily,
and then it has seasonal,
It doesn't say how
seasonal,
many
multi-use.
How many units are in a multifamily though?
right, and we don't,
No, but we don't know how
Allow-
many of them are condemned either.
Oh.
We don't know how many are condemned or not livable either, so it kind of, in my brain, I think that balances to me in those things.
there's more details
there
about it, it's in the law.
Mm-hmm.
For like what specifically it's based on. So our law dictates what the percentage can be based on, so we'd want to put
Yeah.
that in, I just don't have it up in front of me, but.
I'm just saying that the assessor's role doesn't have. Certain.
Yes. Right, that's true. The law stipulates that what we set has to be based off of the final assessment role. That's why so I don't remember exactly how it's phrased. So whatever that says, that would be the information we'd want to pull out. And I don't think you can do a short-term rental in a multifamily housing. I don't think it's allowed in the law.
Sure. In
Part of
the
the
law,
law.
in the town law.
Yeah. But I can pull that, I think data wise, I can look at the law and we can. Plan to put that in the referral. Is there anything else we'd want to ask? It's just like, from your perspective.
I mean, do we want to talk about it as a board, if we all agree we want to keep the number at 0 for this year, we should say the board is considering capping it at the current amount of X and not adding new ones.
But then what happens if, I mean, I know that a lot of people who bought houses as short-term rental investments have ceased that operation.
Mhm.
So is that permit number, even though that permit's not allocated to that anymore, is that permit that is now no longer used become available for use by somebody else?
They hold the permit until it expires.
Right,
Or they,
but when it expires
They don't renew it,
Yes,
then
sir.
then it goes back in.
into the pool.
Yeah.
And how are new applications allocated against that sort of headroom under the pool?
I think we ended up on first come, first served, didn't we? after the period.
So we like keeping a list
Yeah, I
of
think they have to
previous
log, we've been at 0 for 3 years,
3 years.
so they haven't,
And have they had any drop offs? No,
not enough to get us to under 2%.
right?
We're well over 2%, we're at. And I think they reported in that one, I can't remember what they reported last year, but that.
Are we just
don't
gonna-
Remember reading.
And so once people have these, they can just keep them in perpetuity?
As long as they like
Renew it.
renew them.
2
Renew them.
years.
Yeah.
Was there a way to like kind of make it more fair and just do a rolling
We
basis?
could change the law,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like,
lottery every
do
year.
we have like a super like verbal landlord that owns like 10 units and like that's not really?
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
There's some, yeah.
so we did grandfather in some, like one owner that has 5.
Mhm.
But in the law, anything that wasn't grandfathered in when the original law passed is limited to 1 non-owner occupied and 1 owner occupied. So if there are new uses that are owned by the same owner and they have multiple units, that's a violation.
Mhm.
So, I guess it sounds like we should also revisit the last housing advisory letter on this, because they sent us a pretty lengthy one. And, we can definitely revisit the law. I think this is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it up now, because the roles being published and, we've definitely gotten a lot of input from people who can't do this. So
I'm sorry, can't do what?
people who would like to have a non-owner occupied rental and can't do it. And are like, I know someone who dropped off and, because people talk. So it sounds like what we should do is I can, come up with a resolution for referral, and then in the next, I'll circulate the Housing Advisory Committee's comments from last year. And just think about like how you guys want to move forward, and if you want to just refer the topic, and then also we can just keep talking about it. But we do need to make a decision on this, I think, before October 1st, when the permit window opens.
Mhm.
Are we not having another public comment period today?
No, we just do that at our
The working
business
meeting or the
meeting.
business meeting?
Yeah. So then next up, well, we could do the calendar review last. So I had 2 discussion items to add. The one is, okay, the topic of my world this week was deep hole.
Mhm.
And when it's hot, people go to Deep Hole, which is the swimming hole that's on Towpath.
Yeah, it's
There,
lovely.
it's privately owned, but also they formed a not-for-profit that runs the swimming spot, and it's open to the public. They don't have staffing or anything like that. They have a lot of signage. They built a parking lot. They have what they refer to as, community agreements, I think, or something along those lines, agreements. And the issue is that, a few years ago, we made Towpath no parking because of this issue. And it only happens obviously when it's hot, so
There's also a bad injury there, so.
there was, yes, there was an injury there. It was not connected to the parking or the no parking. Someone slipped on a rock. And I don't have any details other than that. And they had to be helicoptered out. I learned that from just following the.
Oh, how many
rescue
days
group.
ago was it?
It was on Tuesday.
Tuesday?
Mhm.
I think I saw that.
Yeah. It was Tuesday evening. So, I met with I met with a lot of people this week. I heard from a lot of people. and met with the landowner, and we talked about the issue. There's a few things that have come up for me because the request originally was, we need you to provide more enforcement. And I do think that we have an obligation, just like we have a lot of seasonal summer uses that generate traffic, and I think our philosophy has always been to use our enforcement ability when possible in order to keep, for public safety and to keep the peace. Because you know, it's when you're driving down towpath and you can't get through, that is stressful for people. That's who I heard from. I heard from people that were concerned that they were gonna hit a child or something like that because of how difficult it was to navigate the road.
So primarily residents on Tupa.
Yeah. So the two, going out and doing a site visit, there are large stretches of the road that are close to the swimming hole that don't have no parking signs. That was grammatically correct, but it didn't sound that way. And I don't know if they were installed and removed, or if they were never, I don't know why they wouldn't be installed, because they're right next to the parking
There are
area.
posts but no signs?
No, there's just nothing, and that's where people are parking.
I believe like 6 or 7 signs have been stolen.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
and
think
they
that's
have the
what-
people and everything, so people find space to park.
I think that's what I remembered,
Mhm.
is that they were stolen, so,
Count your guardrails.
yeah.
Is that on the parcel that is, if you're coming from town?
It's on the left, right before the parking area.
Before the parking area.
I believe it has just recently been acquired by an organization also.
Depot.
No, the neighboring parcel where people are parking off the road. Anyway, there's a parcel that's not owned by the owner of the depot parcel. He owns 2 parcels.
Next door is Turner,
Yes,
and they're parking in Turner.
on the road, yeah. There used to be we did install no parking signs there. So, and that's what I remembered, is that we had installed them and that they were removed, but that's where people are parking. The owner is wanting to limit the capacity to their parking slot
Right, yeah.
size, but that's a challenge on a day when it's 98 degrees and people don't have access to cool down, and so I think to me, it's a complicated issue. So I think we do, as a town, have a duty to enforce the no parking zones from a safety standpoint, but from a scheduling and staffing standpoint, it's a big challenge. Because we can't anticipate a month in advance when it's gonna be 95 degrees outside. And we currently don't have a regularly staffed enforcement body that we can just say, go there, so that's just one challenge that we have. Now, I do believe that this is why we created parking tickets, so I think thinking about doing, really concentrated, like getting cars ticketed. But I also am like, okay, if we're gonna install signs and then they're gonna get stolen again, like, I don't know how we're gonna deal with that. Cause it is a little, the usage of that has been happening for such a long time that it's really difficult to enforce.
Yeah, but it's the volume.
Yes,
That's
it's the
the
volume.
It's not the use of the swimming hole.
Yeah.
Because
That's what I mean. I'm sorry. I agree with you.
until I'd say the 2010s. Mid-2010s, there was never a huge issue with parking there. It was like maybe 4 or 5 cars at the most on a hot day. You'd see it now, like I've seen someone hand to God get dropped off in a yellow New York City cab at D.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there was a big
blocked
story in like 2013 about the top swimming holes in New York
Yes.
City, and that's what put Deep Hole on the map.
Yeah.
But I was thinking if there could be like a capacity, like between the homeowner and the town having a signage of a max capacity.
Yeah,
You know, it's unfortunate if everyone can't use it, but if you go to any swimming venue,
Who
like
does swimming pools? Who does capacity on swimming?
so here,
If I-
so this is the can of worms that this opens for me, which is right now, this is just a private landowner choosing to let people come onto their land, but to me, this is a use that has no regulation for, you know, a restaurant has a capacity, you know, you have to have fire safety, you know, that sort of thing. And so I don't know. I mean, I did broach this topic. I do think it's worth engaging with the landowner about the potential liability and legal concerns and like what our risk is. And is there something that the town should be considering this use as? You know, there's no lifeguard,
I mean, the town's risk is nowhere near as great as the landowner.
oh, I agree, yeah.
And he's very cognizant of that.
So,
We have the ECC test the water. That's my solution.
I mean, we could post it with towaway signs and then tow people when they're leaving.
Tow at your own
Yeah.
expense and actually go down and have Stokes, have Filippo's, have every tow company ready to go and start towing all of those cars out of there. If we tow every car for one day.
I
the
think,
rest will
yeah,
stop fucking there.
that is definitely what I like. We're not having any public participation in the meeting.
Okay, I was just,
No, we're not having any public
There's no
participation.
public
You can reach out to me one-on-one. So I think I think if we did something like that, where for like a period of time, we were able to invest so that it was clear, because I think what it is that people are used to being able to do that.
Yeah.
The other thing, so I can look at that. I just wanted to ask the board, the ideas I had is that there's more signage, we can replace the no parking signs and we can put some other warning signs as long as they are approved by the DOT for like, even, you know, when you go to the parks, they have seasonal signs that are like for the time of year that you slow when it's icy on the mountain, or you slow when there's hikers. Like, I think we could have seasonal signs at the ends that when in the summertime, caution, there's pedestrians ahead. 'Cause that's the other big thing is,
A swimming one? I
yeah,
have a swimming sign.
Yeah, I
have a
think-
Swimming road sign for like a line.
I think
They have something.
I would want to alert road traffic, because
Yeah.
there's people who live there and I think they're very mindful, but then there's people that fly through that road like 55 miles per hour.
When they put the signs up, are they direct buried? They put them in concrete?
They are just T-posts.
Yeah, I wonder if we should reinforce them so that we'll just. And then put up towaway sign. I mean, look, if they wanna set something up, the landowner. People could park at the municipal lot, they can hire a shuttle bus, it's not too far down, you know, but the town should not be involved in this enterprise other than removing people that are parked illegally. And I mean, the other thing is it's a filling spot for the fire district, and I saw motorcycles parked where they need to pull in with their truck.
Yeah,
Yeah, I will say I wanted to make sure I commented on the other issue of the heat and. The summer that is predicted for us that we're going to endure after the last week of temperatures. The closest cooling center to this area is over almost 15 miles away,
yeah.
is the closest. I don't know if we can do it now, I'll ask Mary Lou how to do it, but I would really like to approve that this building. When not in use for the after school program is always available as a cooling center when the temperature gets over 100 degrees.
We can just.
We have air.
Yeah, we've done
conditioning.
it.
We've done it. I know we've done it in the past, but I just think as a standard that should be done and it should be posted on the highway, any social media of the towns, because. There's a lot of people use
Mhm.
the cooling centers, and to make people have to, your car doesn't have AC, and now you're gonna travel 15 miles just to get cool, cause you don't have cold air at your house, cause the swimming hole you're gonna get towed at, you know. I think we do this, we have to also make sure that when it's hot, that we're also trying to be as helpful as we can to our residents also, and to the community with providing cooling centers, or encouraging, you know, the firehouses to also open up their like social halls as cooling centers or things like that too, or anywhere that can during those times. Ours was filled in Kingston.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you guys about, and it kind of sounds like that, we don't have any crosswalks in town, but that was one request, is if we would consider putting in a crosswalk
Where there.
there.
I think if you're not gonna put a crosswalk into the grocery store.
We can't.
Yeah, well, I don't think we should set a precedent by putting one to a watering hole when we were told we can't to a grocery store.
And
I
one
think
that we're
that's
trying to
crazy.
limit use of.
Well, this would be from the parking area to the, like,
It's, people are gonna cross where they're gonna cross. It's a country road. They're not gonna like walk over to the crossing area.
Could you just put in additional signage saying, you know, children at play, or, you know,
That's, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'll do some research into the different signage available at DOT for things like that if you want me to.
well, our
See if there's-
sign person, I can just ask them.
Oh, okay.
They have all
We have a
the,
person, I didn't know.
Yeah, we have-
We
yeah.
paid, we bought some new signs.
Yeah.
Yeah, a person.
so,
Well,
so it sounds like you guys are like, invest in signage, invest in
Towing.
towing and enforcement.
Well, and they have their own site, right? Website,
Yeah, they have a website.
I assume this is it.
There's not room for a lot more parking.
You know, they need to be more explicit on the website, and I haven't looked at it, but if they don't say, you know. You can't park illegally, park on the road is not authorized, you know, people, you're subject to towing by the town. They should add that stuff.
and also just about the dangers of overcapacity at the site itself.
Yeah. I don't know how many people are visiting from their website, but I agree that this stuff should be. I did say that they needed their own better signage. And, you know, they should funnel people who are walking better
Okay.
so that they're not walking down the middle of the road.
Yeah.
It's a registered nonprofit business that is operating this now.
Mhm.
They have volunteer stewards.
Who aren't really there. So,
Well, what
But
would we
yeah.
do to a normal business that's caused this traffic issue?
I mean, that's part of what I'm wanting to look into, because we typically, you know, when we had the past couple weekends, we've had a couple of businesses that have generated some real traffic issues. And those were reported to me, and I reported them to the code enforcement office, I believe they were also, and the code enforcement office is like having meetings with those businesses to be like, you can't allow this, right? So that is kind of the perspective I'm coming from too, is that we do hold
I'm
the
wondering
businesses
why we're-
accountable.
I'm wondering why we're the ones
But then-
handling this, not code enforcement.
Right, but there's no permit. That's what,
Oh, is that why we're the ones?
Yeah, right. Traffic law.
so I think,
I think code enforcement should be somehow involved. I think we need a bigger discussion than this about it.
Well, just in general, with how to best utilize code enforcement and
Yeah.
what's the logic behind having the website anyway? Because like, it's not like we wanna advertise more people coming. I mean, I get that it's a nice idea.
Well, that's why I think
He
they're
wants to
an
make it
official
pub-
business now to me, if they have a website, so like, we would not. Let a normal business block off one of our entire public roads that many people travel on and cause that many parking hazards, that many seasons in a row. without having code enforcement intervene with them somehow, and I understand this use isn't in our, it's
Yeah,
in a
it's not,
we're in a weird gray water area with it, and so, I know you don't have an answer for that, but
Yeah, I
that's
don't.
kind of where I'm feeling for this process too, I think. Yes, signage, what we all agreed to now already, but I think we need to look into. What should be done about this, cause it's if it's an undefined use, then they need to come to us for a permit.
well, if any, I think. You know, any use that has a parking lot, for
You
example.
did get approval for the parking lot. I think.
It was just like I think just a driveway permit. But like the planning board reviews parking lots for uses of a certain capacity,
Yeah.
that didn't happen.
Yeah, that's what I mean, like, I feel like a review needs to be done on this, like.
But I don't,
Right.
legally, I don't know. So yeah, we can
Yeah,
look
yeah,
into that.
I think we
for
should
sure.
look into what we can do, because. I'm sorry, if you have you're a business, if you have a website that you're putting out there, you are a full-fledged business at that point, that is advertising. And if that's true, then they should have the proper permitting, so that there's a safety review done by our planning board or code enforcement. Over that parcel and how that traffic flow and if a crosswalk is needed and things like that, because. I'm sorry, this is balloon too big. If they have a website, like, it's a business now, they're using it as a tourist destination. And that should be defined in our code. And we shouldn't have to be dealing with a discussion on how to schedule and pay constables to enforce signs. That are up and have been up, or have to add signs about people walking across a public roadway that. Happens to have water on the other side of it. Like, sorry, I'm baffled at the fact that they have a website and are advertising this right now, cause that means it's a business.
Well, then.
And they should be
then-
permitted as such.
But then by taking down the website, you're not a business anymore, right?
No, they're still registered as a nonprofit, but they're advertising now.
Well,
They're
No,
advertising
you're saying
their,
that if they have you're saying that if you're considering the fact that they have a website, that they're a business.
well, it should be home occupation. It's registered as a nonprofit. If he's saying it's his personal property, it's home occupation then, because he's advertising the stewardship,
Well,
the
but
volunteer
then-
programs,
But then it takes down
everything.
the website, then it's not advertised.
But then he's still offering stewards
I
that don't
think-
actually go there.
What I found, I think.
I can have a steward at my house.
Is your
So,
house gonna cause a whole blockage of the entire public
Yeah.
roadway?
well, I don't think that this is. Super
Yeah.
productive,
Yeah, I
I
don't think
think
it's productive either.
we can, you know, in terms of
Good.
like, what makes something. What, to me, what it is that we have a use, for example, called. Not-for-profit club or
Mhm.
organization, but when you read the definition. It's like. Not, you know, and
Very
there's like a recreation use. But it's like so to me, I'm like, this does seem. All the signs point to, it would be great if there was something regulating. It a little bit more. Right now, there's nothing except for us. Needing to enforce our. Traffic law, which we should.
Yeah.
But it also is difficult given our current town resources. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, kind of see if there are any other solutions you guys wanted me to
I mean,
investigate.
one of the things you could do is put no parking signs and contract to towing companies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't want any car that's there.
Yeah. Now that that does. We can say it's at your own risk, but. That doesn't necessarily work, that it's at your own expense. It doesn't necessarily mean that we will get that money back. But I think it could mean that
Cool, you just.
Just the
we're
enforcement.
resolving.
That's the
the
difference
issue.
between having them towed and having them impounded. If you have it towed, we can be held liable for their expense. If it's impounded, the driver doesn't get their car till they pay the towing company.
Well, no, it's always towed at maybe. It would-
Have you guys
I don't know
car
what-
impounded and had to pay for it to get out? Cause I promise you, if they just tow it, you don't have to pay the person who called them.
So-
But if
No,
it's impounded, you have to pay them, or it's behind.
It's, well, when you tow, it's implied that it's impounded, that, you know, their car back on front, the tow company, it gets.
Okay, so I'll look into the towing. I'll get quotes for the signage, but it's like 10 or 15 signs.
I mean, could we just like maybe hint to them that putting this website up is just gonna increase traffic and they want it to go down? I don't know, like,
Yeah,
I don't think the
I don't know-
purpose of the website is to attract traffic.
no, but I mean,
I
that's.
think the
effect
purpose of the
traffic.
website is to impose some rules on the use of the property and encouraging people to use the parking lot rather than parking the street. I
Yeah,
don't think the intent is to attract traffic.
No,
although
yeah,
it's
same.
not intended.
yeah, cause it's going from like a locals kind of cool secret to. Now, because that's how I found out, I was like, I don't know where this place is, I just Googled like swimming hole near me and it just
Yeah.
popped up.
I used to swim at the end of Michael's driveway all the time too, before that got banned.
People use
There was
Snapchat.
tons of swimming holes around.
Yeah, that
That's
one
the
was
only one
the-
left, that's.
Yeah.
People are there.
okay, I think we've,
But we all-
How was it solved that on Project 32?
Michael
No
owns
park,
it.
no, Michael does not own it. Parking signs, and
And the coffee shop and tow.
neighbor enforcement.
That's when I stopped going, when the tow truck showed up and
Yeah.
went to go hook up to my uncle's car. And we never went back to Project 32 again.
I don't know.
Also, the bridge is a little dicey now.
Yeah, that would have been a little dicey. But it was dicey back then, it was fine.
okay, so, but I do feel like we're on the same page about what the town should do and what you guys think we should invest in.
And I think Michael's right on that we don't want to get involved in any aspect of business.
Oh, I agree.
Including putting a crosswalk in. But I think that the towing is perfectly fair game to discourage people from blockading the roads.
I'm sorry.
But you do think it's a business that we shouldn't be getting in the business of with the crosswalk? That's one concern.
We don't
Go
want to
on.
get involved in any of the activity that's going on.
Maybe the homeowner can do more signage as to where people should be crossing.
Well, right, well, I think this is the
Yeah, that's-
issue.
it's not the taxpayer's liability, it's not to be paying for constables to go there, to be paying for thousands of dollars of signs that are getting stolen and not paid attention to. If someone gets hurt on the road,
Right,
that's our.
so
liability.
the other
That's
follow-up,
where the issue's coming in, not at the swimming.
well, I think we're in agreement, Charlotte. I think there is an opportunity to see. And I brought this up immediately when I was asked to provide more enforcement. That I do think that I would like to look into if this is crossing into a line where they do need to go before the building department. And now, again, my quick investigation of the code, it was like not black and white, but I do think that there are some big challenges that I hear you guys are saying are not our problem, but they do kind of turn into our problem. So I would like to investigate that.
Got some trail cams. So.
Why, so the kids can steal them?
We put them up high enough. Unless they come with a ladder.
It will.
Yeah, Michael. how can you-
Yeah, you haven't
I did
seen what
these
people
souls
show
that
up
he had
there with.
Trail cam in her day.
I have a fear you don't need a ladder.
See it first.
Yeah, some people don't.
There's all kinds of stuff that people bring there. Okay,
Oh, Lord.
so, planning board, okay, so I do not want to talk about specific. I want to talk about the planning board for a little bit. But I just want to make sure that when we discuss the planning board, we're not, talking about specific people or issues, especially if it pertains to, anything that would be like removal or any discussion like that. So I'm just
structure.
yes, just structure. So there's just a lot of really long meetings, I hear a lot from applicants about how long their application has been before the planning board. There has been a lot of discussion and feedback about the need to have materials available to the public. If any of you have caught wind of that, I just want to let you know that I we were a little concerned about launching the new software program, but after over the weekend and the number of emails I was put on, I just was like, we're launching it next week. I don't,
You guys gonna say, do we not launch it? I was like, yeah.
we haven't launched it because we feel like there's not the staffing capacity to make sure that like it's like, you know, that sort of thing, but I'm like, it doesn't matter. I will do whatever I need to do to make sure this is smooth. And I've worked out some staffing solutions with the code enforcement office. This is what started me wanting to reorganize the department. So I just feel though, when I just feel like from my perspective, I feel like there's a lot of money being spent. We're on track to be well over budget for the legal fees that are for the planning board. I'm not talking about escrow. And
On the money being spent on escrow too.
there is a lot of money being spent on escrow. And I hear about that
Or
from,
collected and some things.
yeah. So, I know we've talked about this. We're, you know, budget season is coming up, but also what other resources, or do we just wait for Munical out and see if that helps? That's definitely gonna help because all application materials will be available to the public, just part of the application process now. Kate just responds to planning board foils like all day long, so. I mean, can I ask your perspective? I feel like it feels very,
It's overwhelming. And I think we're growing so quickly that we can't even keep up with it, and we don't even have the staffing to keep up with it. And it's a huge undertaking for a planning board to even learn what they need to learn on an application. You know, like that's a lot to take in, and it does take a long time, and it's expensive. And a lot of expenses are at the taxpayer, and that's not fair either. And there's so much growth going on, and of course, everyone's entitled to find out as much information as possible, but maybe it is staffing. It's taking a lot to find information, and that also comes from new staffing as well. And I just think there's a whole series of things that just kind of all come together to make it.
it kind of
Very
ballooned.
different,
I feel like
yeah.
it mushroomed.
Yeah.
Like the past couple weeks.
Mm.
And the other issue that I see is like, I do feel like there maybe are some code changes. We don't have anything that's like easy. If you go before the planning board, it's 3 months. A minimum, it feels like.
That's not the room.
Huh?
Everywhere around here, all the bordering towns, I think it's 6 months.
Yeah.
Planning board.
Oh, and then there have been things that are on for a year and a half that,
I know someone who took them 2 years to do a basic file line adjustment.
yeah. So there's stuff like that where I'm like, I am like, is it a cluster? Is it like a lot of issues where our code is like allowing for really, really strict, like, I think some of it is appropriate, but then there are other things where when
I mean, having gone through an application myself, what I saw was that they sit down and tell you what they want at the beginning. You provide it for it, and then they come up with more things. The additional things provide, you know, fodder for unrelated questions that have nothing to do with the law. But in order to keep them happy, you have your surveyor do yet another set of drawings, which takes another month for them to review. And this is historical, I don't know how it works now, but it's not a process where you have a checklist on day one and say, if you want to do a lot line adjustment, this is what you need. And we'll make our decision based on that. What my personal experience has been in the past, and again, I can't say about what it is now, new membership, is that everything was an opportunity to ask more questions. And when you have people on the planning board who publicly state that they are against any type of development in the town, That's why you get into the question where if an alternate has the ability to ask a question, one barbed question can throw the whole discussion off onto prospective wetlands or the possibility of wetlands as opposed to what are actually mapped wetlands, and totally derail something for 3 months as you figure out whether there
Right,
might be
delays
wetlands.
denied,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that all has ultimately a cost, which is why people are building $1 million houses instead of $500,000 houses, because builders know that, or builders have to recoup costs instead of just turning things around quickly, which we also don't really necessarily want. We want everything done with a care and consideration, but the question after question based on the answers to the previous question, has a tendency to provide an endless process.
Are they still using that checklist that was created by a previous chair who was in power for over 8 years?
So that is part of what I'm hoping the new program will help with.
They are still using that.
They're
that
using
guideline.
they're using a checklist that was developed, and then another iteration of the planning board made like a Excel spreadsheet that has like columns. It's a little different and it's not as long as that one. Is just like a big long list.
Yeah,
This is like
it's still posted on their website, like as far as.
Oh, no, they should not.
that.
I won't post it.
That one's no longer on the website, but there is the application packet. But the new, the idea behind this software program is that you log in, you get your application. There's a certain set of questions for the initial submission that are required. You can't hit the submit button until you've provided those documents or answered those questions. Once you hit that, then you've provided like what the planning board has deemed like what they need in order to put the application on an agenda. And then, but it goes into a pending, so that what I've asked for is that a staff member review it for completeness. And then can communicate, yes, they've submitted all the things and what they uploaded was the correct document, because people can just, you could upload anything as a PDF. So, then it gets on the agenda, and then it's part of our code, but there's all these things that the planning board, depending on what it is, they could or couldn't ask for, or couldn't require.
Some of which are based on law and some of which are based on personal feeling.
Well,
Which is the problem.
yeah, and so that then becomes part of the application, where after a meeting, they might say, okay, now these are the things we need. And then that gets put into like a list. So it's all right now, there's a lot of, did you submit this? I didn't get it. Like that happens. So at least that process will be really streamlined. So they do have a list that they go off of. It's not that really long one that you're talking about. That's on a sheet of paper. I can show it to you.
No,
It's like a little chart, and then there's a second chart. There's like a main chart, and then there's a second chart that's like, you may need to provide these other things, but that won't happen until after your first meeting.
Is there a way to create like a tiered system between really complicated projects that are anticipated to have a bunch of layers and review process to?
Well,
I mean, really
Russ,
straightforward.
I mean, it's got the simple subdivision, and then you've got the large.
Right, but I mean, like in terms of putting like time, like.
Well, so
Timeline
we
on-
can't manage the planning board. Like,
Right.
we cannot interfere. They are a completely separate body. They get to set within law, they get to set their own like operations, but we can make laws.
Right.
So I think one way that what I have learned, and again, this is a big undertaking, what I have learned is we haven't done a good job of selecting the uses in the areas that we really want to make happen and making those things really easy so that this doesn't happen.
I was gonna say, I think it's our code's fault, not the planning board's fault.
Well,
a part of it, don't get me wrong, there's errors on all ends, but almost every single one of our codes.
It makes everything
Says-
difficult.
The planning board may in it, like I think we literally did like a replace all on shall in one whole section to
Yeah.
may for the planning board.
Yeah, I'm just.
And that's where this is happening, they're saying our code is not clear enough for them.
Yeah,
To go, oh, okay, Zolly came to me with X, Y, and Z checked off of the list, he's only missing A now. They're going, oh, well, he's missing A, but we could also see if we wanna have D on there and E and J. So let's have him bring all of them then, so we need a yes.
yeah,
we
I'm
need
just
bound-
putting it out
clear-
there that it might be time to think about, overhauling the entirety of the code, and I know that you said it's expensive, but every time we have a legal challenge, that's what, 10 grand right there, and every time we have these like delays, it's just a lot
It's
of
also a lot
resources.
for, we just did that,
Yeah, I
For
mean,
3
listen,
years.
Yeah.
you know.
I'm here for all of it.
Like, whole point.
I'm here for all of it. I think short term though, that's one thing I want us to think about in terms of like a full overhaul.
Yes.
We need a comp plan that
Mhm.
supports it too. So so but I think if there are short term, like we've talked about housing overlays where it's like we need to kind of get the bureaucracy out of the way of the things we really want to see happen. And I definitely see that like where there's leverage, bodies tend to want to take the leverage. And so I think if there's stuff we really want to see happen and we don't want it to go in that direction, we need to do a really good job identifying.
Well, let's identify, what are the
Where-
projects that are getting hung up that we really want to happen?
I mean,
I think a lot of people just give up.
Is there ability for having like, if you had like 2 employees that were designated to do all of that work with the
Yeah.
applicant long before it even goes before the planning board, so when it actually goes to the planning board, it should really be smooth sailing.
Yeah.
at that
so
point.
we're starting to build that in.
Okay.
So we just scheduled 2 blocks of office time for our town planner in the building department.
Yeah.
And one of those is gonna be a window of time where there can be an in-office meeting with like applicants before they even go,
Right.
before they even fill out their form.
Because, I mean-
Ombudsman, like, role.
Hmm?
Like an ombudsman type role,
I'm not sure what that is, but
sort of a. Applicant advocate.
yeah, like
Yeah.
here's what I wanna do. Let's look at the code and find the path.
Right,
Kind of thing.
right.
That we've never had that. We've never really done that before.
And at least if it's an employee, it's someone you can contact daily, where at
Yeah.
the planning board meeting, you're literally waiting month by month.
Right,
Yeah.
and then that's why I wanna merge the departments too, because so much happens on the first end and then they don't ever catch it again. So we are building that in right now.
Okay.
And then I do think there are code issues for sure. And as to your question, I would say I kind of see the opposite personally. I think the things we really want to happen are just not happening.
Yeah,
And
that's good
it's-
saying like, oh, well, we're not like getting any affordable housing.
Yeah, and the things that it's the people that have the time and who can invest the money, and I'm not making a judgment call, but those are the projects that move forward and they move forward really slow. And even those projects, if it would be great if there was a way for even that to happen just faster, because the poor planning board has 17 open projects right
Yeah.
now.
I mean, I think the other thing we need to consider is whether our planning board is too big. I mean, you talk about boards wanting to use leverage, and then you have a bunch of different people with different opinions. We have 7 members. We have an engineer, we have a planner, we have a lawyer. That's a large group of people to try and expedite things through.
That's
And
9
so-
bucks at the kitchen.
I mean, and everybody's talking, everybody's weighing in on this stuff. Maybe we need a smaller, more agile planning board. Maybe we need a 6-member board or a 5-member board. And that'll move things along. I mean, it's great to have a lot of participation, but it also is going to create more questions, more people weighing in. And then to your point, Aaron, you know, they're gonna use leverage we have. If they're allowed to ask for 20 different studies, then the chances are somebody may ask for one particular study.
And I'm not
Well-
saying that that's I don't think that that's an ill spirit. I think when you're making decisions, I think a lot of people, and myself included, you take your role really seriously. And you want to make sure that you're making the right choice. I'm not trying to say that I think that this is like bad spirited, but I think that we have put it in the code that there's that, like,
We give them a lot of power in our time.
But it's also, you're not giving the board a lot of power, you're giving each individual member power, because each individual member can say, I want this, instead of the board making a decision on whether the
yeah,
other 6 members of the board also agree with that single.
Yeah, I
request that
agree
might
that-
be
yeah.
on it.
I've noticed that too.
I think
It's,
that
it's sort of the lowest common denominator type decision making, where whoever says anything drags the whole decision making body along with it, even though the 6 other members might say that's stupid and it's not required.
Well, and again, we can't, I mean,
I know, we
Yeah,
can't,
we can't really,
Look,
But that thing that that one member requested could have found something for us them to see that stopped the entire project.
Could
To
be,
safety concern.
but
You know,
also
I'm
could
just
not
saying, it's a
yeah,
double-edged sword.
no, I think that's what
I
we're,
just don't wanna be painting our planning coordinate in a light, I think that they do a lot of good work.
yeah, I guess that's why I
Good.
think both things are true at the same time where,
Yes.
and like recently there was something I witnessed that was really interesting where they had a subcommittee where they kind of ended up like, yeah, we really wanted to actually do something about this, but it turns out that now that we've really delved into this issue, we literally can't do anything about this, you know? But whereas if they, huh? Yeah, so like, whereas I think if they hadn't done that, they would have wanted to require more because of wanting to resolve this issue that the neighbors have, you know? So there are things like that where it's like, it is a very new board. There isn't a lot of institutional, because this is a very freshly appointed board. So they are learning, that type of stuff. I don't think it's out of any ill intent, but I do know that I don't think our code really,
Right.
It doesn't.
Is,
that's
so
like-
them leaning on legal advice is kind of understandable.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, we have a wishy-washy code for what the planning board should may require. It's because we put may in everything. We never say shall or shall not. We literally have only may in there, so. I mean, if you're questioning it, I would do the same thing here. I'd request the extra information to make sure I got a solid answer.
So in terms of the professional services budgets, do you guys just want me to do you want me to do budget modifications to accommodate? Or do you want me to have,
You said that they're at 100 almost for the year.
what was the budgeted versus the actual? How much did-
I can pull it up. I know that the pace of the attorney, I think,
I think there's also a big catch-up period that might
yeah,
artificially increase
Yeah.
the hours, but.
Can I say that I think we should give it till the end of July when they have a month of Unicolab under their belts and then see how we kind of fluctuate from there when they can better track and maybe have better grasps on it. I
yeah,
think like move what we need to make sure they're covered, but I think that I agree with Sally, there's gonna be a little bit of shuffle. They didn't have an attorney. Did they always have it? No,
No.
or they didn't always have.
we didn't always have a planner and so part of, we budgeted for the planner last year, most of service, all of the professional services get billed to escrow.
Mhm.
But then there's a certain portion that gets billed to the town, right? So we increased the attorney budget for the planning board last year because we anticipated that they would need more, but now they're meeting twice a month for 5 or 6 hours at a time. And there's a lot of there's maybe 12 meetings between meetings where they have with individual planning board members and the lawyer and the planner. And there's a lot, we audit the vouchers, so that's
Yeah, yeah,
what's
yeah.
in there. Now those meetings get billed to applicants usually, but there's just a lot of activity going on,
We
like,
have 17 open projects.
Do they have admin support that they need
I mean,
in terms of more headcount? Like what else can?
I think that, yes, I think that is. I think there could be more staffing.
Is that a hard position to hire for, or?
It is a
Yeah,
hard
the
position to
balance.
keep someone in.
Yeah.
What are we?
That,
I'm not comfortable moving more money. Just making up the difference there. I mean,
I said for.
no, it's fine for money, but the fact that they're this over allocated midway through the year is a sign that there needs to be better management of the budget for that. Like,
okay, noted.
I mean, the engineer is there for the entire meeting, the lawyer is there for the entire meeting, like, these are 5.5 hour meetings. I don't know how often things are being referred to them, but we as a board decided when we did the budget that we were going to reduce the amount of legal counsel that we had to make sure that we were sticking to our budget. So I think, like, we need to have a conversation with them and be very clear, like, we can't just. We're creating a lot of burden everywhere. We're creating burden for the applicants, we're creating burden
Well,
for our
that's-
staff, we're creating burden for the planning board. I mean, I don't think they want to be there for 5.5 hours.
No, but how is reducing their resources gonna shorten that?
I think we need to look at all of these solutions, the code changes, talking to the planning board, making sure that they're aware of where they're at in the budget, like, it's just
And
looking at additional staff.
And I think
Aaron, can you have the budget open?
they should
I'm
be
okay.
empowered and feel more confident just making decisions rather than using lawyers as a
Yeah.
crutch.
Well, I
I mean-
think my computer's
Yeah.
spinning.
I just wanna know where we're at.
yeah.
Or do you know where we're at for town board on attorney fees?
I don't have it memorized. I know that we're good, we're fine. We're like half. I look at the percentages.
Yeah, that's how I normally look at you. Just a reminder, Michael, last year we didn't have that split properly,
What?
the attorney fees. Remember our town board attorney fees went over. I wanna say last year, and it was because everything that was a planning board decision that we need, like, it wasn't technically ours. So
No,
I don't know that we adjusted that out when we did the budget.
No, we
Well,
did.
We did separate it, okay, that's what I was wondering.
I think it's. Yeah, I think what I was thinking is we did invest quite a bit more money in support, and the question for me is like, is this an indication that oh shoot. Sorry, it's on the network. I'm trying to open, so I can't open it. I'll send you, I'll circulate.
I'll look at my reports from Wes.
Is it
Um,
possible that the attorney reviews like the applications and doesn't actually attend the meetings?
Yeah, I was
Because
gonna
I have
ask
the
the
hours
same
and
thing.
hours that go into
Yeah,
listening to public
exactly.
comment.
I've even felt like that for our meetings.
That's what we decided. I have brought that up multiple times.
Right.
But-
breaks is like a 30
Yeah,
minutes
it's
break
just
sometimes.
sweet money, yeah. Nice
I brought it up, I guess that's why I'm bringing this up, because I wanted to, as the budget officer, I'm asking you guys. We've never, it's a weird thing because there's actually no purchasing officer assigned, but they are spending town money when they consult the attorney, and so I'm like, well, if it's really needed, I think spending that money is better than a lawsuit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? But we've also endured several lawsuits last year. With, yeah, but I mean, for planning board decisions, and it's not necessarily connected to who the attorney is either. So I guess that's what I wanted to hear is like, do you want me to just keep pace with their expenditures, or do you want me to have a conversation about, I'm not authorizing these purchases at this point without having a sit down?
I agree with.
I mean, they have the money right now, so, but I just,
I
at
agree
this
with that.
pace,
Sit down.
They're gonna run.
at this pace,
Yeah.
they're gonna run it.
Yeah, I would have a proactive sit down. I'm happy to sit down. If you need some backup money for Aaron. 'Cause yeah, I think that they should, like, yeah, they don't look at this.
I mean,
don't
without seeming
know.
threatening, it's like, we don't want,
Oh, no, I
Like,
Yeah,
have,
no, no.
I feel like I have good
no.
relationships.
cause like them resigning in mass would just be.
Everybody wants to help them through the whole process
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
it, and maybe discussion of how to revamp the whole process as a whole to help everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I meant is backup,
Yeah.
not like strong arm backup. I meant like backup to if they to like get
Right.
ideas.
I think if someone has an application ready to go before a planning board, the attorney should have already reviewed it, and any concerns they have, put it back, to the employee to figure that out, so it's ready when it goes to the planning
Yeah.
board, so they already know it's okay, it's been reviewed by our attorney and. I don't know.
right. I do, and I've worked, Dave and I have talked about this. Dave's gonna start training some of our staff to do things that, he knows how to do, that I think that they're really excited to learn those skills to help them prepare applicants and like know what needs to be done more. So there are things like that, and I think the more we can have staff work in collaboration with professionals, it's better too, because, our professionals are like, their attorney is $250 an hour. So it's,
Meetings about.
but most of that's getting billed to the applicant. So it's really,
No public comment.
I encourage you guys to study the invoices because, I think that it's worth us really taking a look at that stuff. And I agree, I do have active conversations. There's just, it has reached a point where in terms of like, the hours that are being spent, how long applications are, and the planning board came to us last year and like, give us more resources. And I think I just kind of wanted to hear from you guys of like, what's our next conversation need to be? We are launching Unicolab next week, so we'll see how I'm hoping that that'll help you out. But in terms of the operations and how applications come in and, streamlining that burden so that there is quite a bit of that, like moving files around and organizing files and people having ideas on how they should be organized, and that's a whole area, but we're not billing our lawyer for that. It's, but it sounds like what you guys are saying is, we should move forward with making sure we have the staffing support and have conversations about the budgets and kind of I have opened up these conversations too with the certain members.
Yeah, and I know that we can't dictate their processes, but you could at least ask them to verbalize what they're thinking, right? Is that appropriate?
I mean, I think we can have conversations.
Would they accept requesting authorization to expend public funds? Like, they're not, I presume when they contact their lawyer, they're not contacting you first. Sorry, I don't want to create additional burdens, but if we're going this far over budget, there's no check to say, hey, I'm about to submit this, it may cost $500. I mean, that's the expectation for our highway department.
I've been trying to instill that. And I think that's also why I'm coming to you guys.
Yeah, let's
Whatever
make
you
policy.
need pre-approval.
Hmm?
Pre-approval for the.
I don't think there needs to be pre-approval,
But I
but
think that, I mean, if you have like monthly. Pro rata budget allocation, I think you're right, over it.
right.
I think it's appropriate to say, yeah, you're 60% of the budget.
Well, right, and I've been having those conversations every month. When I got the first bill, I was like, this is not, I know if you keep this up.
Yeah,
I knew that right
You're
away.
going out in May.
So I have been having those conversations. I guess the question, right now they have the funds allocated. I can't say you can't spend this if the funds are there. It's when the funds run out
Mhm.
that I can say that. And I haven't really seen a change. So
Yeah.
I think that's why okay,
Yeah, that's why if you want someone else there, so that it's not only you saying it, Aaron, I'm happy to come.
Yeah. I feel really comfortable with everyone and having these conversations. I'm feeling the amount of communications I'm getting around the planning board. It's just a lot, and I would like, selfishly, I would like that to be reduced. I want there to be a smoother process for everyone, because I think it'll help with that. Too.
Oh, I just knew with the lawyers fees, I don't wanna see what I saw last year on our totals.
Yeah. Well. We had a lot of litigation that ended up getting billed to the town. Too. Okay. The. One thing I wanna bring up that I got like this. I don't know how I didn't know about this, but we have to adopt the county's hazard mitigation plan. We have to do it as soon as possible. So I'm gonna send that to you guys and. I
There's their hazard.
mitigation plan. This is not on the agenda, I'm just telling you.
That's really exciting.
So exciting.
Is this one of those things where we're like, we don't sign out, you don't get a lot, that this is gonna make us like a landfill thing again?
If we don't sign it, we don't, it has to do with our FEMA coverage, so we have.
Oh, so then, yeah, okay, that's a good one. I thought you were saying like a chemical, just like.
No.
So I was like, this is your Euchre thing again.
But I don't know how I didn't know that we had to do this, but maybe I was marking the emails as spam or something, but okay. So the only thing, I want to wrap it up because we have executive session. We've got. I think I can have my new assistant help put a calendar together based on some of the stuff we've talked about. But something that you guys aren't thinking about that I want you to be aware of is the budget calendar. So, and this is why I'm keep talking about 2026. So July is when that's usually the month that we're doing the budget versus actual that gets sent out to departments. This is my second season doing it, but last year I was very new and I definitely was not like prepared for all of this. So all pre-meetings and conversations need to happen in July. In August is when department budget versus actual and department requests for the budget are sent. They're due back to me September 20th, hopefully before then, because my tentative budget is due on September 30th. Then the town clerk has to, these are legal dates. The town clerk has to present the budget to the town board by October 5th. Then we work in the month, I have like the printout of the calendar. The month of October, we work to publish a preliminary budget, which is the budget that the public hearing is held on. The public hearing must be held it's tied to the election.
Yeah, no later than the Thursday after election.
Yeah, no later than the Thursday after election, and then it has to be adopted by the 20th. So that all feels very far away, but from my perspective, it's not, just because I know like that it took
In July, pretty much.
yeah, and it took me about 140 hours to do the budget last year. So so I don't want to be doing it on the time frame that I did it last year. So the one thought that I want you guys to think about, we don't really have to talk about this too much, but I'm putting it to you, is we've always done budget review as a town board and we schedule like 4 review meetings in October. We have a lot that we're trying to accomplish this year. And I had the idea last year to form, and this was echoed by a member of the public. I had the idea to form a budget review committee that is not made up of the full town board, but maybe one town board member and then staff. That meets with departments. Cause that's the whole thing. You get their proposals, I put the preliminary budget together, and then you review everything with the departments and with the town board. But I thought it would, if you just think about how you would feel about taking some of that review burden, putting it in the hands of a budget review committee that would still come to the board and present the edits to the preliminary budget that they're proposing, but we wouldn't necessarily have to schedule all these meetings. One of the reasons why I had this idea is because I was trying to schedule departments to come in October. And like, it was really hard to ask staff to come at 6:30 at night to sit and talk about their budget. And we ended up scheduling like 5 or 6 meetings because the board, and I agree, felt like it was really important to have FaceTime with every department about their budget. So that we were really communicative about what we were approving, adjusting, denying, or even encouraging them to actually budget more. Which is actually kind of more like what I feel like I have to do, is be like, no, but what do you really need? So just, I have a feeling you guys might like this idea, but I think we will, when we're forming it, we'll want to really think hard about what you guys need as a board from the committee to feel good about your final review, because you're the ones adopting the preliminary. I published
Oh,
the
the budget.
tentative budget, but the preliminary and the final budget is you, like you're making that decision, so. But just be aware of that calendar, and that also means, this is how I feel, I'm like, okay, in a few weeks, I have like no wiggle room at all. Like, this is when, from July until December, it's just
Go time.
very busy. So I also feel like maybe having a budget committee, not having to schedule all these extra meetings frees up my evenings, and then additionally, it might free you guys up to actually do additional stuff in October, whereas the board typically isn't really doing much in October because we have all these meetings all the time. So those are my thoughts.
I'm here for a budget committee instead of 4 additional meetings.
Great. That's always.
I also think it'd be good if you ask department heads to do like a goal setting. I'm not even saying like a plan for the next year, but like, what are your goals for your office for 2026? What are your priorities, what you need? So then everyone has an understanding, oh, this is why they think they need $150,000 for this, and you know, or maybe they're buying that piece of equipment for that particular reason, or you know, this office wants to, you know, go in a whole different direction.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like rec might have a different idea of what they want to do, and I think it's important if there's a goals and plan in place for each
Yeah.
department prior to sitting down with budget numbers.
I agree with you. I think that's one of the things I learned last year, is when I got it was very constricted. And I'm actually hoping to completely reformat the budget that I published this year. That's one of the reasons why I'm feeling like it's gonna be a lot of work for me, is because I'm actually gonna redo the entire format. And I agree, because that was one thing I was like, but thinking about, and some of it is coming up now where I'm like, oh, okay, that's great that you're thinking of that, but we did not budget for it. So I agree with you, and I think I want to document those things too. Instead of going line by line and quibbling over, you know, that's what we do, is like, oh, we need to find $1,000 somewhere. I think having a summary or report that you're seeing of each department would be helpful.
Right, because someone might, like for me, let's say I decided like records management, say this is kind of a plan I really want to put in place. As a board, you can be like, okay, maybe we can do this and this year, but that's not as much of a priority as this for code enforcement,
Right.
you know, so like, I think that will also help a lot, but also know like these are the goals that each department has.
Yeah, yeah. And then we also need, part of this is laying the groundwork for a 10-year financial plan.
Yeah.
Which is, we really need something like that. So I think that visioning work can go into a long-term. Okay. Great, lots of discussion, lots of really good discussion, you guys, I think it's really helpful and hopefully next week we will just have a lot of resolutions that we have and. So I do have a couple of executive session items.
Do you
So you said next week, you mean 2 weeks?
Oh, sorry,
Um,
next meeting. There's no meeting next week, sorry. And we do have a long weekend. 4-day work week, okay. So, oh,
All of them, the actual nonprofit and only relying on government money has worked. Motion to enter executive session at 9:20 or 9:16 PM.
do I have a second?
Do we have to say the purpose?
For the purpose of matters leading to
Yeah,
the
he's doing
discipline
the training.
or removal of an employee or person.
And the appointment.
And the appointment of another person, it's not the one
Okay,
we're also discussing.
so, oh, sorry, it was, the motion was made by
Looking at me, I said.
Charlotte and seconded by,
terribly.
any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries.
Charlie, you sure you weren't in the job box? Huh? You sure you weren't?